So, welcome back. This is another Balladari Basket Weavers podcast. So we're into the election period proper, 5 weeks to go. I'm getting myself organised with websites and coverage and trying to fight for a bit of a place in the debate. I want to talk today about Callan Park because you will have noticed in the last couple of weeks, save hands off Callan Park, the signs are appearing, the leaflets are appearing, the jewel in the crown is under threat again. This comes around every 3 or 4 years. State governments have another crack at our 60 hectares of prime inner city harbourside land. What's this one all about? Okay, so it's coming to a head. What the government, the current state government is proposing, they're circulating what they're calling an exposure bill, which will involve amendments to the Special Provisions Act currently protecting Callan Park, which is what's preserved the park in Aspic. For 20 years, it's been protected, as the Friends of Callan Park will put it, by a Special Provisions Act, an Act of Parliament which has, as I've said before, some pretty stringent limitations on what you can do. So you can't have anything in Callan Park which makes a profit. You can't have any residential development. You can't have an aged care home. Those of you who've seen posts I've done before will know that I've been going on for a while now about the need to take a different approach to our local assets like Callan Park. This idea that you've got to stop any kind of development, and you've particularly got to stop and fight against anything that smells of profit or, God forbid, big companies coming in and making money. So other parts of the Act which put all sorts of difficulties in terms of how we're going to maintain the thing are that you can have educational assets there, but you can't have, it explicitly excludes a school, both primary and secondary. And those of you who've been watching me will know that one of my big pitches on Callan Park is that if we want to be realistic about saving it, we've got to find a way to get secured funding for the upkeep and maintenance of the buildings. And a great way to do that, about the only way to do that without letting something like residential development or a commercial hotelier or other sort of commercial premises in, will be to find a really good public tenant which has got coin, which has got allocations from state budgets every year. And that's why I think the best solution is going to be a long-term plan to shift the Balmain campus of the City Secondary College from where it is at the moment to the Kirkbride complex. It's tailor-made for a school, high school, best practice high school, STEAM, sustainable, integrated into beautiful parklands. And as a quid pro quo on that, you'd go to the government and say, you can have the old high school site and, residential development. You get, I don't know what you'd get, a couple of $100 million for that site, who knows. But, you would retain planning consent down there for those of you who live around that part of Balmain. We could, horse trade, we'd get the ferry stop back, we'd get all sorts of car controls and all sorts of other DCP and BASEC stuff and neighbours stuff and all the good sustainable things going forward. I think putting a high school in there at Kirkbride is the sort of lateral thinking that we've got to adopt. Now, so why don't you take some shots out the window. What I'm looking at here, it's a Sunday afternoon, it's a glorious day. This is the jewel of the park, our park and all that. A few people on the bay run. It's quite hot. 60 hectares, Jojo. Look at all of this. And there's only a few people out. And I get it. When the mayor and supporters of the park talk about the importance of quietness and stillness and all of that, that's true. But this is, have a look up the hill there, Jojo. So it's glorious. But there's nobody here, and the reason there's nobody here is there's not much to do once you've walked around and looked at the trees, and that's lovely, don't get me wrong, but there's no coffee shops, there's no cafes or restaurants, there's no crafts, there's no activities that make a profit of any sort, because that's what the rules say. And you start to get to some of the buildings which are really amazing. And we go ahead there, and we're sort of coming up on Kirkbride. Oh, Joe, by the way, I see that Darcy Byrne has come up with a brilliant idea for Kirkbride. Oh my goodness, you'll never guess what it is. What do you think it is?
Is it a swimming pool?
No, not a swimming pool. A museum. No, that wasn't it. What was the idea? Oh, I wish I could think of it. So Darcy said, "Yep, let's have a school. Let's do a feasibility or explore the feasibility of shifting the school down here." Bravo, great idea. Anyone who's been watching my website will know I've been banging on for 6 months about this. There's a lot we could maybe explore and discuss, and in this campaign it'd be really good to do that because it'd be tailor-made for a school. Jojo, what do you reckon? It'd be just tailor-made, yeah?
Yes.
And it would mean that you've got sporting grounds just down below, which we saw. And look at all of this. Now again, Sunday afternoon, or just take shots down here, Jojo. There's one lone dog. Nobody out here. You could just have you could have arts performances, you could have music festivals, outdoor gigs, as they used to have the Laneway Festival down here. Just pan up to these buildings, Jojo, the Kirkbride. I mean, really, I'm all for wellness and stillness and all of that stuff, but we've got to have a lateral think, I reckon. It's covered by the Act, Jojo, so nobody's allowed to make profit, nobody's allowed to, do X, Y, Z down here, including a school, so we've just got to come up with a new approach. Look at this, gorgeous. Sunday afternoon, now there should be hundreds of people having picnics out there, using it, right? There should be people having fun. So, my proposal is, this is just putting it out there, why don't, over the next 10 or 15 years, we as a community propose to the Department of Education that the Kirkbride complex behind us, these magnificent buildings, become the new location for a fantastic new Sydney Secondary College Balmain campus, a best practice public STEAM school that everyone in our community can have access to. It could anchor one end of Callan Park, which then, being a public asset, would give us all a stake in it. Rich and poor, left and right, Labor, Liberal, Greens, believers, non-believers. A public school is the best expression of our community desire to keep this not only as a pristine park that we can all share, but a useful one, something with a genuine commitment and investment in the future. Joe, what are your thoughts? So, we throw it back to your kids, ask them, how do you feel about that? What about if we spent the next 15 years making this the best school, secondary school, public secondary school, and then gradually made a plan to shift the current secondary college campus at Balmain down to here? What are your thoughts, Jojo?
Well, as someone who attends the Sydney Secondary College in its current state, I do believe that a change in location would not only benefit the well-being of students at the school, but I also believe that it would just be a lot more beneficial because it's a better location. It'll make things a lot easier.
But as you see, it's gorgeous. It's Saturday afternoon and it's pretty much empty. I mean, it's saving Callan Park and then there's keeping it completely isolated and unused and unloved. I'd like to see more people here on a Saturday afternoon actually using it. That's how we'll keep a vested sense of public ownership. If we are serious about preserving the park as we've come to know it, it's not enough just to say things like, let's make it a wellbeing centre, arts centre, make it a community centre. Great ideas support the sentiment. We have to be hard-headed and come up with a concrete plan and a way to pay for it. One of the best ways of preserving public land is to put shared public assets and services into it. So we could make a STEAM high school that would be the envy of the world. We integrate it digitally, we make it sustainable, we draw on the Aboriginal heritage of this park and make it a true Indigenous Australian education experience. It's also high tech. Lots of young families moved into this part of Sydney. We will need a high school that's built for the 21st century. If we place a public school in this part of Callan Park, that is something that everyone, from rich to poor, will have a stake in. We will own it. Our kids will own it. No one can argue with that. In exchange, we can say to the likes of Harry and Lang and all those developers out there who are eyeing off this park, take the old site. It's much more suitable for a best practice residential development. Iron Cove residential development is fine. We can sell that land to them, take that money, throw it at the Department of Education and say, righto, let's all get on this, make a great school out of the Kirkbride complex. The state would then have an obligatory role in maintaining it. To me, that's what you do. A big, beautiful piece of land like this, the way you safeguard it against slow death of demolition by neglect and being sliced off and sold to high density residential development is to put a genuine, shared, useful public asset in it.
Rolling.
Okay, behind me they're convalescence cottages. These are heritage listed parts of the Callan Park complex, just down from the Kirkbride complex proper. These are great buildings and they're nuggety and they're small and they're practically oriented. They're empty, they're falling to bits, no one's got the money to support them. If you put a high school up behind us, that's where the bulk of the classrooms are and modernised, that's where the kids are. These buildings would be ideal. If the school is a STEAM school, you could house commercial, semi-commercial, tech, data management, future engineering, kind of high digital industries, small startups, really creative hub. And you could make it sustainable. Green technology would be another brilliant thing to put down here, integrate it with the school. You could have some of the best tech thinkers in Australia house their little virtual companies down here, and during the day of the week they could give cutting edge lectures to the kids in applied science and engineering and computing. They could run their businesses from here, stay engaged right at the cutting edge of their sectors, but also bring the best of our kids down here and integrate it into the way we teach our kids this sort of stuff. If you want to build a school for the future, a proper STEAM school which gets our kids and throws them at the world, absolutely ready to take it on, these are the sorts of beautiful, creative places you could start that journey. The alternative will be to keep fighting and keep everything out of here and say no tech, no for-profits, no integration of for-profit public, and you'll come back in 10 years and there'll be 400 billion shitty little apartments here instead. Let's get lateral, at least start the conversation. All good?
Yep.
We're at the back of the Kirkbride complex. Have a look at this. Beautiful old building, solid as rock. This is the perfect place for high school classrooms, high school common rooms for each year. Staff rooms, upstairs offices for senior staff. Laboratories, all sorts of practical things that a school needs. But it's locked up and it's not being used. Now we pan around here. If you imagine that's the Writers' Centre there. So that's a great building. I've done plenty of sort of playwriting courses. I was a volunteer for a few years. Does some lovely things. Certainly COVID's closed it down a bit, but there's no reason if you had a public high school in this complex here that you couldn't have a lot of writing activities that were once again integrated. General public use, but also used for school classes. Visiting writers come and do writing workshops during the week for the school. After hours, you run the normal playwriting courses, writers' workshops, launches. There's a way you make a public asset truly part of the community is you break down the barriers. Let semi-commercial and commercial open access activities and public schools all mix in together. The kids get the benefit of the best expertise, whether it's in writing, whether it's in high-tech, sustainability, gardening, science, application, all the STEAM subjects. This park, this complex, these buildings, the beautiful Wangal and Gadigal lands, the tens of thousands of years of Australian history here, you can integrate them into the best school Australia's ever seen. That should be a project for our community, for New South Wales, for Australia, for the next 3 and 4 generations. Let's give this complex and this park to our kids. Let's not argue about it, try to keep it the same for us. Let's make it truly public, truly about the future.